Hello, welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Thursday morning this week. Joining me from Boston, Massachusetts, where he's going up and down the East Coast. The Celtics are on the West Coast, Bontemps. So I know you're
correct.
not there seeing Celtics.
I'm not allowed to go anywhere warm, so I am still here.
You're waiting for the warmth to come to you.
That's right. That's my lot in life, is to wait for the warmth to come to me.
Well, you're a human cold front.
That is exactly right.
You will be in New York later this week, which is where, how about Ben MacMahon on the East Coast? He's in New York, where he was at the Nets Mavericks game, which came down to the buzzer on Wednesday night. And he's headed down to Philly, I think, today. The best part about this, Bontemps, before I introduce him, he had to change his train. He's taking the train.
Oh, I'm aware of him having to change his train. I'm very aware.
The Texan didn't know how to handle being on Amtrak. He had no idea how long it was on the train from New York to Philly, number one. It could have been 8 hours, 17 hours. He had no idea. He had no idea it was like an hour and 25 minutes. And then secondly, when it came to change his train, you might as well ask him to book a ticket to the moon.
No. And first of all, I knew it was like an hour and change. Second of all,
you haven't been introduced yet.
Oh, howdy, partners. How you guys doing? Their damn website wasn't working. Like, I got to the right screen, clicked the box, it doesn't do anything. So I had to call. So I would say shout out to Amtrak, but come on, man, get your stuff together.
I heard Bontemps had to bail you out.
Bontemps offered and contributed very little to the process. Actually, Bontemps did find me the schedule, so whatever.
All right.
Yes.
Well, while MacMahon navigates the Eastern Corridor there, we're going to stay in the Eastern Corridor for the first part of this podcast. And before we talk about your Mavericks, MacMahon, because they are one of the most fascinating teams in the league at the moment. Philly, with the big game we mentioned on Friday against the Mavericks, Philly got a win Wednesday night in Cleveland. The Cavs continue to take it on the chin as a side note, and now are, as we sit here in our virtual tie for the 6th seed, a half game plus the tiebreaker ahead of Toronto. Toronto has gone 4-0 on a West Coast trip.
5-0 actually.
Is it 5-0 now?
I've been telling you guys, Scotty Barnes for Rookie of the Year. I don't know if you guys were on that.
Well, Rookie of the Year is still open in my mind, but Toronto has pulled into a tie, which is relevant because where the 7th seed is relative to the Nets, who are in 8, is a big deal, especially considering Kyrie can't play in Toronto. So while all that's going on, the 76ers are one of the most important teams to watch down the stretch of the season. Bontemps, you cover them. You're with them every few days. In Cleveland, they held on in the fourth quarter. There was a comeback attempt by the Cavs, who are just wounded right now. No Jared Allen. But Philly has had sort of an up and down stretch here after the All-Star break, which was when James Harden joined them. Embiid is playing very, very well. He had another 30-point game Wednesday night. He's actually averaging 2 more points a game since Harden started playing for the team. Harden hasn't played in every game, so I think it's 9 games he's played with them. But in those 9 games relative to before, Embiid is averaging 2 more points a game. So I thought his scoring would go down. It's only gone up. But they have mixed results, Bontemps. They have some nice wins, okay wins, but they got beat by the Nets on their home floor. They got beat in Miami when it mattered. They got beat by Boston. How do you judge where Philly is into this early Harden experiment so far?
I think it's gone pretty much the way I expected it to, in that they have massive strengths and they have massive weaknesses. And depending on the team they play, those strengths and weaknesses, play out the way you would expect. I mean, obviously with James Harden and Joel Embiid, you have probably the 2 best guys at getting the foul line in the league. They get a ton of foul shots, they get a ton of easy points. They score a lot of points as a team. However, the backup center situation is an absolute disaster. They have no athleticism on their team. Their transition defense is predictably terrible. We'll get to that more in a second. And their shooting from the outside is really streaky. So you combine all that together, and they're a team that when James Harden's step back is going down, when their perimeter guys are making shots, they look like they're going to score 145 points a night. And they look like a fantastic team. If they play a team that's got really good wing scorers, like the Brooklyn Nets, like the Boston Celtics, they quickly run into a lot of trouble because they have nobody to guard them. And if they have teams that can take advantage of them and run, they start to look pretty rough, pretty quick too. After the game, they played against the Nets when they lost by 1,000 points. Kevin Durant just flat out said, we know they're slow. We tried to run them off the court. They did. In Monday's game, in the battle of the MVP candidates, Nikola Jokic, I think, had 5 or 6 assists where he just took the ball and chucked it ahead to somebody for a layup because they just ran past the entire Sixer defense and got an easy bucket.
Yeah, I forgot about that. They lost to the Nuggets too. That's another bad loss of quality.
Yeah, of course you forgot about that. Yeah, of course you forgot about
Of course
that.
he did.
But as I tweeted, all that proved was that Jokic has a better supporting cast than Embiid. The people in Denver did not enjoy
Embiid
that.
Embiid is really
Sarcasm.
struggling. I can't believe anybody would view him at the top of the MVP. You're right.
At the end of the day, I have had when the Sixers made this trade, I thought it gave them a chance to win the title, which is why I understood they made it. But at the same time, I thought their flaws are going to be too much for them to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And we're now a month into this experiment, and that's still where I sit. I look at them compared to teams like Milwaukee and Philly. And if Brooklyn can ever get whole, Brooklyn, maybe even Miami, and they just have too many weaknesses, I think, to beat any of those teams. Because ultimately, in the playoffs, as you guys know, it's not necessarily about what you're good at. It's about mitigating your weaknesses and not allowing teams to take advantage of them. And the Sixers have these just gigantic, gaping weaknesses in their team that I just don't see any way they can solve.
Well, and Wendy, you said the Nets beat them. We need to use a much more aggressive verb there. They absolutely humiliated them. They stole their soul. I mean, that was an embarrassing performance. And listen, James Harden has a track record of sometimes shrinking when the lights get brightest. And that was kind of a classic James Harden big game performance where he disappeared, they lose, and then he reappears at the club with some of his rapper buddies after the game. I mean, it had all the elements of a big game James Harden failure. Harden has the most to prove of any player in the NBA. 2 straight years, he's chosen his destination. Last year, the hamstring failed him. Look, he chose his situation. So there's no excuses. We can talk about roster flaws around him. This is what he wanted. It's what he chose. And Bontemps, what do you see as the Sixers' priority down the stretch of the regular season? I think that we've got to talk about. There's no way in hell they want the 2 seed, right? They don't want to see. They don't want.
I think we'll get to that. I think we'll get to the seeding part in a minute because that plays into the Brooklyn conversation we'll have later.
Yeah,
I think.
I was going to say another priority is Embiid getting the scoring title. But so those 2 things, what are the other priorities for this team down the stretch of the regular season?
Look, I think that the entire Sixer season boils down to this. I've been saying since the start of the season on the pod, as you guys know, that James Harden does not look like the same guy as he did before he hurt his hamstring a year ago. He doesn't have the same burst. He can't get by people. That player that for the first 2 months of last season was a guy that people were talking about as being a possible MVP, despite the insanity that went on in Houston. That was an indication of just how good James Harden was playing. He's never looked like that guy again since he hurt his hamstring. And he doesn't look like that guy now. He can't get by anybody. And so to me, if this team wants to actually be a legitimate championship level team and wants to win a championship this year, the only way that can happen is if that version of James Harden comes back. And so to me, the next month of the whatever, we got 24, got 3.5 weeks left in the regular season. Can James Harden get back to being that player again between now and the playoffs in a month? That to me is the whole story of the Sixers season, because the flaws are not going to change. They can't fix any of this stuff. After Monday's game, it was hilarious hearing Doc Rivers say their transition defense is disappointing. James Harden saying they were being they just had to get back on defense. Joel saying they were lazy. I mean, this team is going to be a terrible transition defense team. We knew that before they made the trade. So that's not going to change. Like, all their flaws are there. So it's just whether Joel Embiid and James Harden can out-talent their flaws. We know Joel can do it. Right now, James Harden does not look like a top 5 to 7 player. If he's not a top 5 to 7 player, this team is cooked.
You see glimpses. You see glimpses of it with Harden, but you're right. For this season, it has been just okay. And I think people got all excited when he gets there, and and he blew up the first few games.
Well, they played three. They played the Wolves, who foul more than any team in the league, and then they played the Knicks twice. And James Harden was hitting his step back. And like you said, the glimpses are when James Harden's hitting his step back. But honestly, I don't care if he's hitting his step back because he's not going to do that all the time. He needs to get his burst back and be able to get to the rim and make plays the way he did before he hurt his hamstring. I just wonder if he's permanently lost a step from that hamstring injury. And if he has, he's just not a top 5 player. He's still really good.
Yeah.
But this team traded for him thinking they were getting a top 5 player, not a top 20 to 25 player.
Two things I've
that's
noticed.
Where they're at now.
Two things I've noticed watching them late at the end of close games. One is that Tobias Harris turns into a wallflower. They run nothing for him. Now, we can debate. It's not much of a debate. His contract is higher than his output as a player. He is being paid like an all-star. He is not an all-star. But
he's a $35 million fourth option.
All right.
I know, but sometimes they act like he's an 8th option. They don't do anything for him. I mean, this guy, I remember this guy being able to execute in half-court settings when you put him in pick and roll action, especially with a dribbler who is a threat to drive or shoot. He can do some things. They don't run any. Now, he did have a decent game on Wednesday night against the Cavs. When it comes down to it, they don't run anything for him. He is just out there spacing the floor and passing the ball onward.
And Harden said it. Basically, he essentially said he's a catch and shoot guy. He needs to be ready to shoot the ball, spot up and shoot.
Right. That's which has never been it's never been Tobias's strengths. You could talk about his contract, whatever. Tobias is a guy who's used to having the ball in his hands, like you said, Brian. The way they're using him and just having it basically stand there and be Ryan Anderson, it's not you need to try to find a way to maximize what he's giving you, and they're minimizing what he's giving them with the way they're using him.
The second thing is, and Bontemps, you've been pointing this out, their closing lineup. They have been taking the ball. They have been taking Matisse Thybulle out of the game and finishing with George's Niang. And was it the Denver game? Which game was it where Niang had the ball in his hand repeatedly, wide open, missing?
Well, he was 2 for 10 on Monday, and then I think he hit 1 or 2 threes last night. Against Cleveland.
I mean, if you don't believe in Danny Green and you don't believe in Thybulle, you're taking off the guys that you need to have out there to defend the big, strong wing players. That's the whole point of the way this team is designed. You have to have your best your size wings out there. And I mean, Niang is a plus defender, but he's not Thybulle.
I wouldn't say he's a plus defender. I would say he's adequate.
Okay.
I would also say he's adequate. I would say he's adequate at power forward against other solid power forwards. He's not a guy you're going to put out there to guard Kevin Durant or somebody.
Yeah, I would say he plays hard, but is certainly limited athletically. See the Jazz series against the Clippers last season.
Yes.
I would also say playing a man named the Minivan, nicknamed the Minivan, is not exactly a way to address your transition defense issues.
No. Well, and look, here's the thing, right?
And I love
everybody talks about Matisse Thybulle. Everybody talks about Matisse Thybulle like he's prime Gary Payton. Matisse Thybulle is a really good defensive player. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to have him on an all defensive team this year. And the reason why I'm for 2 reasons. One, he's not a guy that you could put on somebody and he can lock a guy down. Despite the fact that everybody thinks he's like this Kawhi Leonard type guy, he's not. That's not what he is. He's
a defensive playmaker. He's a defensive playmaker.
That's exactly what he is. He's a guy where if you have another really good wing player, like when they had Ben Simmons on the team, and he could guard the best player, and then Matisse could fly around and make instinctual reactionary plays and get steals and deflections and blow plays up, that's where he excels.
A much better version of Robert Covington.
100%. That's the first part. The second part is, at the end of the day, I think to be on the all defensive team, you have to be able to be on the court in the moments that matter. And very clearly, you could say whether this is the right choice or not by Doc Rivers. he's become such a liability on offense that Doc Rivers has decided he can't be on the court when it matters. Like at the last night, you have Darius Garland and Karis LeVert out there, two good scoring players, and the Sixers are trying to guard them with Tyrese Maxey and James Harden and George Niang. Because Doc Rivers decided he needed to have somebody who he can have the threat of making a three instead of Matisse Thybulle, who every time he shoots at this point, you expect them to miss.
Yeah, like, and there's probably an offensive role that Thybulle's capable of that's similar to, Gary Payton II or Bruce Brown, but you're not going to have that role with the big fella who, listen, if you're not giving the big fella the ball on the block or at the elbow. That is the role, Tim, that he's got to play, right? They're trying to have him do like cuts to the rim and getting him for lobs for dunks and stuff. But like they have to have a guy spacing the floor around Embiid and Harden. They have to. And he's getting the just absolutely wide open shots, and there's no confidence he's going to make them. So he's not playing down the stretch. And again, you could say maybe Doc should have him out there. Maybe he shouldn't, but like it's a defendable decision because of how bad Matisse is on offense. And this goes back to what I said at the beginning. This team just has massive, massive weaknesses, and it's just a bizarre construction of players around these two guys. It's just going to be very hard for them, I think, to beat any kind of elite team in the playoffs as a result.
Like you said, they might have to beat three. They might have to beat three elite teams.
Right.
Yeah. Or four.
Well, yeah, I'm just talking about to get out of the East.
Yeah. Right. And it really does come down to this. James Harden has to play at a first team all NBA level.
Yep.
He shot 32% from the floor in the last 5 games. It's a small sample size, but there's a lot of, we started going through the whole season. It ain't that small of a sample size. And he is not, and in Brooklyn it was, he doesn't want to be there. He quit. Well, you want to be in Philly. So
look, they were the number one seed in the East. They were the number one seed in the East on Christmas. Right. And James Harden did not look like a top 5 to 7 player all season, even when things were good in Brooklyn. He does not look like the same guy. And look, when the Sixers had the big press conference and, Darryl was up there with his guy and everything was happy and hunky dory, they traded for a guy who they looked at as one of the 5 or 7 best players in the NBA. They got,
Darryl traded for a guy who he thinks is one of the 5 or 7 best players in NBA history.
Well, right. So they got a guy that's supposed to be a super duper star, top level MVP candidate, like best player on the floor potentially every night. And he's a clear second fiddle to Joel Embiid, which again, good player, definitely better than not having anyone play at all, which is what Ben Simmons would have been. But it's not good enough to overcome the flaws that this team has. And like you said, whatever their focuses are down the stretch, that's the only focus they can have because these other problems they've got, they're just completely incapable of fixing. Like this backup center thing, we haven't even talked about DeAndre Jordan. That's a complete disaster. They can't solve that.
Seen that coming.
Well, and but to be fair to Doc,
only the Mavericks and the Knicks and the Nets and the Lakers.
to be fair to Doc Rivers on this one, I think he's still a better option than Paul Millsap was, which was an absolute non-starter. Like there's just no options here. It's not like he's choosing from a series of bad options. I think they're kind of drawing dead.
The thing about that trade, and I think this has been reported. I don't think this is any newsworthy, but like the Drummond move where Drummond was in the deal was like that was the last minute thing when they were haggling at the very end. In fact, I think.
Well, Doc flat out said it when he talked right after the trade because for people that don't know, he became very tight with one of Doc's kids. I think they went to high school together or something, but he's known Drummond for a long time and he recruited him to come to Philly. And he even said after the trade that a couple days before the trade, he had a chance to sit and talk with Seth, who obviously is his son-in-law, and like talk to him about the fact that if this happened, he was going to be in the deal because everybody knew at that point that the Nets wanted Seth in the trade. But like he even said, Drummond never thought he was getting traded at all. He was just thrown in at the end. Drummond actually was the guy who talked to the media, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, on deadline day at like 12:30 and then was in the deal an hour later.
So, I mean, I have to say, like, I understand why the Nets wanted him, but like, it's a pretty good move to take that guy.
It was a slick move.
Yeah.
100%.
It was a pretty good move. And I mean, I don't know the exact Nets motivations, but the Nets had backup bigs.
I mean, he helped them. They have no rebounding. He definitely didn't help, but it's a bigger loss for the Sixers for sure. Yes. Like Drummond was a really, really good backup center. Yes. He really helped them.
Yeah. Yes. Drummond grabbed every rebound when he was on the floor last night, but he still got played off the floor because, I mean, pick and roll defense with Luka operating.
But I'll tell you what, the Sixers would take him back. So a couple of things. Sure. So Embiid's shooting is down about 4% against relatively small sample size. Embiid's shooting percentages, both from 3-point and overall, are down a little bit since Harden got there. He's shooting 46% after shooting 50% overall, 35% on threes after shooting 37% on threes before that. His usage is down slightly as well. Their offense is performing slightly better, but he's less efficient. It isn't they're not yet getting the bounce with that pairing.
He is going to the line 15 times a game. So I don't know if he's less efficient. His field goal percentage is down slightly. He's going to the line 15 times a game in that stretch.
True.
And shooting at 85% from the line. That's pretty efficient.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and Max is up too, but their results have been uneven. So and honestly, I do think that Embiid's percentages might dip a bit the rest of the season because look, he's chasing a scoring title. It's just a fact, and he's competing against one of the most shameless stat chasers in that I've ever seen. And I'd say that with all due respect. LeBron is, in the conversation for the greatest player of all time, but LeBron seems to have figured out, man, I've only got one thing to play for this season, and it's that damn scoring title at age 37, which would be historic. And the man is playing 40 minutes in blowout. The other
his numbers.
Yeah, the other night. So they lost that game in Phoenix, and then they played a back-to-back the following night against Toronto. Got down by 20 points like the first 5 minutes of the game. That second night of that back-to-back, LeBron played over 40 minutes
as a game-time decision.
That's right. It was the first time he had played over 40 minutes in the second night of a back-to-back in more than 3 years.
And how many of those 30 came in the fourth quarter?
I don't remember.
A lot. I don't have it in front of me.
The thing about it is these Laker games, they're constantly down like 25 points, and I turn them off and go to bed. And then
that's when the comedy starts.
Then I wake up in the morning and I read, the Lakers cut it to 4 with 6 minutes left. The Lakers had a shot to tie the game with 12 seconds left. And I'm like, oh my, I mean, these, I guess
that hasn't been happening. Time. That hasn't been happening lately. But they've just been getting drilled.
Well, it happened again Wednesday night. They were down huge and they cut it all the way down to 4 in the fourth quarter. That one, it was a central time zone game. So
they lost. They also lost that game by 20.
I know, but I'm telling you, they cut it down to 4. So
with LeBron having the worst plus minus on the floor, because he does he's not gonna, his energy is going to be put towards putting the ball in the basket. Well, they ain't going to be put towards, you want to talk about transition defense problems.
Woo! Well, how about transition offense? There was a possession against the Wolves on Wednesday night where LeBron he got beat on the perimeter and there was nobody there to help. Now, okay, I guess you get beat on the perimeter, but he's been getting beat on the perimeter a lot. He gets beat on the perimeter. There's no center in the game. I'm not exactly sure what he thought was going to be back there, but he gets beat on the perimeter and it gives up an easy layup. And he gets so frustrated that he doesn't run back down on offense. The Lakers ran the entire possession with 4 offensive players. And LeBron was down there talking to the Laker bench, apparently about the defensive possession.
In his defense, at about that age in pickup games, I started selectively deciding when I was going to cross half court. I think he's slightly better conditioned than I was. It's
one thing to not cross half court on defense, especially when you think there's a fast break going. It's another thing to never cross half court on offense.
Well, for a half court offensive set, that is impressive.
It was.
By the way, Pat Beverly's revenge tour versus Russell Westbrook continued last night, and hell hath no fury like a scorned Pat Bev. My goodness gracious.
Well, yeah, that was some incredibly disrespectful stuff towards Westbrook by him and Karl Towns.
Well, the one Westbrook gets the ball in the corner in the fourth quarter, the game's decided, and he takes a wide open fourth 3-pointer from the corner, and it was a 19-foot shot and 20-foot shot that he shot about 22 feet. and the reaction throughout the entire arena was amazing. The Wolves bench, Karl Towns is mocking him, Pat Bev is mocking him. It was
dude. Can we
something.
please let this end up being like it looks? Grizzlies, Timberwolves. That will be the most bleep talking series, first round series. Like both those teams. Bop, 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 bop.
It would be fun. By the way, there's a Kirk Goldsberry story on our site right now that says the headline is the scoring title might be the only title LeBron is playing for this year. I think we can remove might from that. I'm pretty. If I end up looking bad about that in 4 months and the Lakers come back and win the title, fine. You can play this clip all you want. I feel pretty good about saying that's going to be the only one he's got a shot to win.
All right.
Maybe the 9-10 play-in title.
Our friends at CarMax have reimagined car buying to deliver a truly flexible shopping experience that puts you in control. Because at CarMax, you have the freedom to shop online and on the lot. Once you find the right car, you can buy online with home delivery in select markets, or choose express pickup at your local CarMax. And CarMax has you covered with a 30-day money-back guarantee up to 1,500 miles. Learn more at CarMax.com. CarMax, car buying reimagined. Before we transition to the Nets, Bontemps, you have trivia.
I do have trivia.
Brought to you by CarMax on the lot or online. CarMax for the best modern car buying experience. Brings this trivia question.
CarMax, for some reason, continuing to sponsor the trivia question after all the foibles that you've put on it.
There are two. Your charm.
I was I was at the Garden on Sunday for the reunion of the Big Three and for Kevin Garnett's jersey retirement and Ray Allen's campaign beginning to have his jersey retired, which I thought was kind of funny.
Also, Spencer Dinwiddie campaigning to have his Mavericks number retired. But go
Spencer playing very well this week. We'll get to that. There are two teams, though. The Celtics have 1,000 jersey numbers retired. You can guess how many if you want. But the trivia question is, there are two teams that have not retired a jersey yet.
Which two teams that have not retired a jersey yet?
The Grizzlies?
Incorrect.
No, Zebo's up in the rafters.
Oh,
that was the first one.
Yeah,
okay.
It is the first one. Fitty for the city.
Shout out to Stats Williams again for the stat.
Timberwolves, I believe.
Incorrect.
Really? Who are they? Who've they retired?
Sealy.
Okay. I know KG's not up there.
KG is not up there. KG made a point several times on Sunday to bring up ownership and how great ownership was in Boston, which is not a coincidence.
Very subtle.
Yes. Yeah. KG, not subtle.
The Thunder.
That is also incorrect.
Well, the Sonics have retired jerseys.
I get an asterisk on that. Don't give me an asterisk. That's bull.
Give me an asterisk.
I mean, they are, they've given out KD's number. Teams that have not retired, the Raptors.
Raptors are one.
Okay.
Whenever Kyle Lowry
retires, number 7.
He will
no
be
one
the
is
first,
wearing number
No one
7.
will wear number 7 again, and probably no one will wear DeMar's number 10 again either. I would guess, but but that those have not been retired yet.
I'm going to say Raptors and
what about the Pelicans?
Yeah, there got to be some Hornets numbers, right? No? Yeah. What?
Hornets is not the answer. Well, I was waiting for an actual answer. You guys were
Pelicans. I said Pelicans.
That is not the answer.
Somebody else who doesn't have any jerseys retired.
Yep.
All right. You've stumped us. Actually, Stats Williams has stumped us. You just pass it on.
Clippers are the other team.
But how the hell is Bill Walton's number not retired? I guess he just got
played
hurt
like
a bunch
four.
there.
He played like 4 games for the Clippers. Played about as much as Kyrie has played for the Nets.
Maybe they retired like his his ankle brace or his foot cast. Huh.
What about
Blake will probably get his jersey retired.
I was actually
what about
Piakowski?
Or Ola Candy or
Ola Candy. All right.
So well, trivia question this week.
Speaking of
Kyrie,
guess
the Clippers, but they've been around so damn long. They haven't had a single guy. Jeez.
Ah, that sound has to make you smile. It's the sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility. Shopify has the tools and resources that make it easy for any business to succeed, from down the street to around the globe. Reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. Synchronize your online and in-person sales. Gain insights as you grow with detailed reporting, conversion rates, profit margins, and beyond. More than a store, Shopify grows with you. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. So go to shopify.com/hoop, all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/hoop right now. Shopify.com/hoop. Speaking of Kyrie, Brooklyn Nets on the road this season. Okay. Number one offense in the league on the road. Their point differential when on the road is plus 3.7. Per 100 possessions, they outscore the opposition by 3.7 points. That's third, according to the stats I'm looking at, third in the league for a road team. When they play at home this year, their point differential is 26th, minus 3.8, almost exactly the same. The difference between the Nets, now granted, those are season-long numbers, and that's going to be weighed down by the fact that they played a whole bunch of home games without Durant and Kyrie. I'm not saying that statistic is the be-all, end-all, but it's an illustration of the vast difference that Kyrie makes.
There is a slight difference between having a guy who can score 60 in a game,
right,
and then not having him. And last night, as the Mavs come back down the stretch of the fourth quarter, they're doubling, and they did this to Steph Curry when they beat the Warriors recently. They're doubling him. They're basically saying, "Listen, you're gonna have to work like hell to even get a shot up." And KD did manage to hit the go-ahead three late, but like he could barely get the ball in his hands, and he's all frustrated. He's taking those swipes at Dorian Finney-Smith. Why'd you pay him $52 million? Well, it's 55. But anyways, is he a defender?
Did he say that?
Yes. Yeah. He's
I
like,
didn't see that.
He called out Dorian Finney-Smith's contract. Like, is he a defender? Or are you going to have to use this strategy for the next 4 years? And I'm like, well, it was pretty good strategy. And so like, you're taking a swipe at Dorian Finney-Smith for executing, as he's a good role player, executing the game plan to help his team win. That's why they paid him, because he's a good role player, executes game plans and helps his team win. But like, there's a really simple solution for teams not being able to throw double teams at KD down the stretch, but it's, we can, like, it ain't happening.
The big news, before we talk about that, the big news that happened on Wednesday with the Nets was that Steve Nash, first off, I mean, look, I like Steve as a person. I really do. He is some of the stuff that he's been saying publicly to the media this year, it's just, I don't even know what to say. But 2 days ago, he goes, I am extremely confident that Ben Simmons is going to play for us in the regular season. The day he said that, or within 24 hours of him saying that, Ben Simmons had an epidural injection in his back, which Steve Nash announced yesterday that Bontemps, did he have it done in Orlando, or did it happen while they were
while the team was there?
Right.
Because I saw someplace where it was like, it was in Orlando, and I go, that doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I have no
the same day Steve Nash said that he was extremely hopeful. The same day he got the epidural in his back.
So first off, as a reminder, and it's easy to forget this, I had to go look this up myself, but when the league shut down 2 years ago in this last week in 2020, Ben Simmons was sidelined at that time indefinitely because of a nerve impingement in his back with the Sixers. And Brett Brown later said that had the season not shut down, that he didn't think that Simmons would have been able to play the rest of the year. That even when they restarted the season in June of that year, he still wasn't 100% right. And remember, he came back into the bubble and then hurt his knee and wasn't able to play. But he had that back issue 2 years ago. So now Woj and Ramona report that this is a L4 issue in his lower back. There have been players who have gotten this epidural injection, and it has made a significant difference. And they have been able to come back and play after a few days rehabbing. But it always, I shouldn't say always, it almost always implies that there's something more serious involved. I'm not going to take a guess, but
epidurals mask symptoms. They don't fix problems.
Right. That's number one. Number two, this is not a guy who had been playing,
Right.
and you're going to be able to reactivate. Woj said that they were hoping to get him to play the last week of the season. Bontemps. This is a real setback. So we can go on and on about what's going to happen with Kyrie. But when we were judging this Nets team, we were under the belief that Simmons was going to be able to come back.
Mhm.
At this point, even though I know that these epidurals historically do work, how can you count on Simmons for anything at this point?
You can't. I'm operating on the assumption Ben Simmons is going to play this season. And I think that's the only logical assumption you can have at this point. I mean, remember, this guy has had one half-ass practice the entire season.
What was 5-on-5? Yeah.
But that's it. And that was 8 months ago or 6 months ago or whatever. That was in October. I mean, he's done nothing since then. He's done nothing with the Nets. He's done nothing beyond 1-on-0 light workouts with the Nets. So you're telling me that this guy who had an epidural in his back this week with 3 weeks to go in the regular season is going to successfully ramp all the way up to be ready to play before the playoffs start? Or you're then going to tell me that this guy, Ben Simmons, you're going to throw him into his first game in the playoffs? I don't really see that happening, especially when you have to remember the Brooklyn Nets historically are an extraordinarily cautious team when it comes to injuries. This under Sean Marks, they've been very slow to bring guys back. They take extra time on time, like all that stuff. Like you look at the entire thing together, it's just extremely, extremely difficult to see how they're going to get Ben Simmons back in 3 weeks. And by the way, on top of that, set aside all that other stuff. We already know Ben Simmons has had a lot of issues in the playoffs in the past and is certainly a complicated guy to try to fit into your team, even if you have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. I mean, I think he's a tremendously talented player, but he's also one that you've got to use in pretty unique and specific ways. You're going to try to just jam that in the playoffs or like in the final 2 days before the regular season ends. It's just very hard to see how this ends in any way other than him just not playing for me.
Well, at least we know that he wasn't using the back to try to duck a return to Philly. I guess if you're looking for some sort of silver lining, but dude, like last night, God, I talk about like, hey, if Kyrie's there, you can't double KD. Well, if Ben Simmons can catch the ball in the middle of the floor and attack 4-on-3, I think certainly you have to reconsider that strategy. And boy, it would have been nice to throw 6'10" athletic Ben Simmons at Luka Doncic, who's going for 37 and 9. If Ben Simmons is in that game, maybe they don't have to double Luka on that last possession. He doesn't kick it to Dinwiddie for the game winning 3. Like, even if it's not even if there's some clunkiness, there are very obvious ways that adding Ben Simmons to the mix could majorly benefit the Nets. But at this point, I think if you're looking at it from the Nets perspective, anything you get from Simmons the rest of the season is almost got to be put in the bonus category.
Man, I mean, this is just a lost season, man. This is a team that when they came together, you thought maybe they weren't a guaranteed champion, but you had to figure, give them 4 years, they were going to get one.
Well, honestly, they came together, and you're thinking that it's a potential dynasty. Now,
Yeah.
Hold on. We're gonna stop right here.
With the safe return of live events, you can actually be there to catch all the action in person with Vivid Seats. That's right. Every alley-oop slam, every one-timer, every sideline grab can be experienced live. And with Vivid Seats rewards, you can earn rewards like free tickets. All you have to do is collect stamps, redeem, and repeat. It's that easy. From upper level to courtside, Vivid Seats has you covered for all the events that matter to you. So grab your tickets today and cheer on your favorite team from the stands. Visit vividseats.com to download the app today. Vivid Seats. Life happens live.
I got something to say about Kyrie Irving. We're not going to talk about the vaccine stuff. We're going to talk about Kyrie Irving, the player. People act like Kyrie Irving, the player, is Stephen Curry. I don't understand it. I really don't. The guy has never gotten an MVP vote. He's never gotten a first team All NBA vote. He has made second team All NBA one time. He's made 3 All NBA teams in his career, and he's always hurt. So he hit
a game 7 winning.
Yes,
shot.
He's always hurt or hurting the team.
He hit one of the greatest shots in playoff history. No question. He's a unbelievably talented scorer. Okay. He's also sabotaged this year's team. He sabotaged the 2019 Celtics.
Yeah.
The first 4 years of his career with the Cavs, they were an unmitigated disaster. His career was rescued by LeBron deciding to show up and be on his team. Or 3 years of his career, I should say, 11 to 14.
Mm-hmm.
So, but people act like he's Stephen Curry or Kevin Durant, like he's on the same level as Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant got asked after the game where Kyrie scored 60 if they're the greatest duo of all time. He's not one of the top 2 duos Kevin Durant's ever played with.
Yeah, you know how I said that that's true. Maybe not top 3. We can go down the list. But you know how I said, like with Cat, to declare yourself the greatest something of all time, you have to have at least 100 playoff points, career playoff points. Right. Or to be the greatest duo of all time, it requires more than one Uno series win. I mean,
which Kyrie was injured for.
Well, and again, like that's why I cut you off on the dynasty thing. Like
I said, potential dynasty.
If Kevin Durant had chose to play with Kawhi Leonard, yes, that could have been a potential dynasty.
Listen, when they traded for Harden, you had 2 at the time MVP caliber players and Kyrie as the number 3 guy.
Yeah, that's different. That's different. You said when they went to Brooklyn. That's what I'm saying.
When I said they, I meant the whole group. But and look, we can go back like KD choosing to team up with Kyrie, knowing the history of unpredictability. Sometimes you got to be careful of what you're wishing for, and he's dealing with that.
I just think the conversation around Kyrie, the player, is wild, and I always have because he can go get. Yes, he can score 60. He can. He's not a good defensive player.
Or 50 something on, 19 shots. I mean, he is an unbelievably talented player.
If I'm playing a one-on-one game and I need buckets, then sure, Kyrie is great. And I would pick him pretty high. But basketball playing in the NBA is more than just getting buckets, which I know is why Kyrie is this hugely.
Here's what I'm going to push back on. Kyrie, it's proven you can be not just a contender, but a champion with Kyrie as your second best player. That is a proven.
That's
fact.
true, but
it's been proven.
To Bontemps' point, he's a decade into the NBA, or more than that. I think he got drafted in 11.
It's his 11th NBA season.
He's pretty much gotten. Maybe not the minimum that he could have gotten out of that in terms of team success, but way less than it could have been. And this is another season.
Yeah, that's fair.
That is going to involve Kyrie. That's going to be chalked up as a lost season.
It's been proven Kyrie could be the second best player on a championship team if the best player on the championship team is arguably the greatest player of all time.
Well, guess what? Kevin Durant ain't too far from that conversation.
I understand that, but I'm saying, like, again, people treat him like he's Stephen Curry, like one of the 10 or 15 best players of all time. Like, people were debating whether this guy should have been on the all 75 team, which was completely insane. Mm-hmm. Like, his resume is nowhere near any of these people that are on the all 75 team. Like he's a border. I don't even think he's got a Hall of Fame resume at this point, other than making that shot in Game 7. When you look at his actual accomplishments on the court, he doesn't have that many.
If Kyrie, with his contract up at the end of the season, said, "That's it, I'm taking my peace pipe and I'm heading off to the hills," would he be a Hall of Famer?
I think he would make the Hall of Fame because of how people view him. I don't think his resume stacks nearly up with the people who are in the Hall of Fame.
Well, you're talking about you're comparing him to Steph Curry, like Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson was considered a snub.
He doesn't have Klay Thompson's resume. Like he just doesn't.
That's fair. I mean, Klay does have 3 championships, 5 finals appearances.
He was one of the best two-way guards in the league. Like, but that's my point. Like, it's just forget all the vaccine stuff. That's a whole other conversation. Like the conversation around Kyrie, the player, to me has always just been wild. It's just like he's not a guy that's ever proven he can win by himself.
Because when he's good, he is
yes.
Yeah. When he's got it rolling, he's legendary.
He's very fun to watch.
He is.
He's just like I said, he's treated like a top 5 player in the league.
Well,
and like when the Nets traded for James Harden, he was clearly the 3rd best player on the team by a significant amount. And they traded for him in part because they were not sure if he was going to be available, which is also a part of this that people just gloss over. Set aside this stuff that's going on now.
Well, anyway. I with the Simmons, I mean, he was always sort of an unknown. Now I would say he's a known, and then he's known that he's not going to be able to contribute. I don't know how he could. So I just don't know where that goes.
Playoffs, I still put him in the unknown. Like maybe he's able to come back at the end of the regular season, and I still put him in again. I put him in the bonus category.
Well, I mean, that to me, that's where you have to have him.
They're hanging around there at number 8, and this is what we were talking about earlier with the seeding situation. If they can somehow avoid having to have Toronto in the 7, I mean, let's just say they stay in 8, they can avoid Toronto in the 7, so that they can get Kyrie for their play-in game. And let's say it's Cleveland. We're not. Jared Allen maybe should be able to be back for the end of the regular season. I don't know, but if the Nets have Kyrie going into Cleveland with Kyrie and Durant, I mean, obviously.
By the way, now here's the thing we should lay out. So there's a 4-loss gap from the Cavs and Raptors to the Nets. There's also a 4-loss gap from the Cavs and Raptors to the Bucks and Sixers in second. So that's how compact 2-7 is in the East right now. Chicago Bulls are 2 losses ahead of the Raptors and Cavs. They have the hardest schedule.
Yeah, that's right.
Toughest schedule left, and they've been very bad for a while. So, I think their record is now 2-16 against teams with better records than them this season. So that's going to be something to watch too, because you could have the Bulls, who, by the way, the Bulls, by the time the playoffs roll around, could have Lonzo Ball back, could have Patrick Williams back, are going to be a much better team than they've been the past couple months when they've struggled with no Alex Caruso and neither of those guys playing. You could have the Bulls sitting there in 7th, fully healthy, ready to go against the Nets in that game, which, if I'm the Nets, I'm certainly hoping I play Cleveland because I wouldn't want to play Chicago. And I certainly don't want to play Toronto where Kyrie can't play.
Right. But if you're who's ever sitting there in the 2, whether that's Milwaukee,
it won't be the Sixers.
It's gonna be Milwaukee at this point. Unless Milwaukee catches Miami. They're 2 back of Miami. And I'm sure they're going to be trying like hell to catch Miami for the 1.
Well, Milwaukee right now is only a game ahead of the Sixers. So
I'm saying the Sixers will make sure it's not the Sixers. I believe.
Okay. Well, what about the Celtics? The Celtics, they don't seem to care who they play. They're rolling through everybody. They just rolled through the Warriors on Wednesday night.
The Celtics, I could maybe see getting up there too. I could maybe see the Celtics getting up there too.
But I mean, that's the thing. Like, as we get down to this stretch run here, I mean, I don't know if these teams are going to try to avoid Brooklyn.
Oh, I can tell you, there's people are watching the standings. Like I'm talking to these teams. People are watching the standings already. Like, Spears talked about it on Monday.
I don't know if the Bucks or Celtics will. I do know this. I'm pretty confident the Sixers will.
Everybody's watching the standings. everybody is curious to see where it winds up. Now, I don't know if everybody's going to necessarily be trying to engineer a certain outcome. I think it's safe to say certain teams will, but I think everybody is watching to see where the Nets wind up, because whatever you think about the Nets' overall chances, you don't want to see a healthy Kevin Durant in the first round of the playoffs.
Hell no. Oh my God. So that's going to be a running storyline. CSX Transportation is an industry leader on the move. The railroad company has immediate openings for freight train conductors. Join the CSX team and start your paid-on-the-job training today, earning nearly $25 per hour with no degree required. If you're safety-focused with a passion for great service, you've got what it takes to move your career forward at CSX. Apply at csx.com/careers. That's csx.com/careers. CSX is an equal opportunity employer. Before we go, you had a great stat in your story today, MacMahon. Actually, MacMahon, you had a story that came out yesterday about Luka's passing.
Definitely go read that. It was great.
Check that out. Spend some time on that one, I feel like, MacMahon.
Indicating he doesn't usually spend time on things.
That's right.
Much better than the crap you usually slap on
that's right.
the keyboard.
Yeah.
I just tried to give you a compliment, MacMahon. He's just coming in here backhanding you.
That's the Windy experience.
Yeah,
at least my insults are direct.
Yeah. That's true. There's no you're not exactly known for your nuance, MacMahon.
Oh Lordy.
Stat that you had in today's the stat you had in today's story about the Mavericks clutch play. Could you detail?
Yeah, and we talked about this in a recent pod. They were dead last, the worst clutch team in the league through the first couple of days of February. They had a February 2nd overtime loss at home to the Thunder. They were minus 34.5 net rating at that point. Since then, and this is a 38-minute over 13 game sample size. So small, but not tiny. Their net rating is like plus 50 and point something. So they're plus 53 in 38 minutes. They are by far the best clutch team over the last month and a half. And, there are a lot of factors there, but Spencer Dinwiddie, who has hit game-winning threes off of Luka feeds in the last two games in Boston and last night in Brooklyn, the first game-winning buzzer beater of his career. Spencer Dinwiddie has been an absolute massive factor in the Mavs morphing into this clutch monster. And it's funny how quickly a reputation can be repaired in the NBA. And Spencer doesn't hide from this. Like, he basically got blamed for the Wizards being kind of a dysfunctional circus. Like, he took a lot of hits, or reports came out, like basically he was a problem in the locker room, he's a bad guy, blah, blah, blah. He's got a new lease on life in Dallas. And, this guy he scored 23 points in 19 clutch minutes since coming to Dallas. I mean, and we're talking about, he was a huge factor in a comeback from 19 down in the fourth quarter to beat the Warriors on the road, 12 down in the fourth quarter to beat the Nets last night. They came from behind to beat the Celtics. And, it's sometimes fit and scenery and an opportunity just makes such a massive difference.
Why is it, MacMahon? So obviously, and what happened in the game Wednesday night, they trap Luka at the end. He releases it out to Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie's wide open, hits the shot.
Well, it was a tough shot. Dragic actually got a decent contest on it.
That's true. So what is the reason why this change? How does it free up Luka? How does it affect, why is it working?
Well, I think a part of this is Luka has quickly formed a trust, and Luka trusts everybody who's on the floor with him now, and there's no, everybody. So
is that a nuanced discussion on Porzingis? Is that what that just was right there?
I mean, there's a little bit of that. And again, I've said it before. It wasn't like he was butting heads with Porzingis this year. The really painful passive aggressiveness from last season wasn't there, but they just didn't click. And, if you're playing for the Mavericks, you're playing off of Luka. And so a KP post up is just clogging things up. It's interrupting things. There's none of that now. All these guys. So, and I actually was talking to Dinwiddie about this after practice the other day. There is role definition. That's kind of one level. And then there's role acceptance. That's the second level of that. And what the Mavericks have around Luka is a bunch of guys who have role enthusiasm. They not only accept the roles, but they're excited about them. They know exactly, okay, here's how I fit, here's what they need, and they're all in on it. And for Dinwiddie, basically, like, he is shooting over his head right now in terms of his career 3-point percentage. I'm sure there will be some regression there. But his role is essentially, hey, play off of Luka. The defense is going to be shifted that way, wants you in attack mode. And then, during the times when Luka's resting for whatever it is, 12 minutes a game, you and Brunson are going to be on the floor together, play off of each other. And it's, in Washington, there were a lot of eager mouths to feed, a lot of guys who are young in their career, were playing for contracts. This guy want to touch, this guy want to touch. Kuzma, kind of wants to be a star on the rise. KCP, I'm a proven championship player. Montrezl Harrell's always, and we go on to, obviously Beal is going to be it just got, whatever the reasons were, it got off the rails. And Dinwiddie is pretty well known. He does have a tendency to be the smartest guy in the room, and whether that's accurate or not in terms of the IQ, I think he's often right, but it might rub people the wrong way. But again, he came to Dallas, and it's like Morgan Freeman, emerging from the prison sewer on the other side, baby. He's
Morgan Freeman. Jeez, buddy. Tim Robbins.
Andy my
Dufresne.
bad.
If Morgan Freeman walked out, buddy. But that's okay.
You knew what I meant.
It was such a beautiful analogy.
It was a good attempt.
Seen it in a while.
It was a good attempt.
I was close.
It's not on that often. So I
what I meant.
The other thing worth pointing out, I think, is something that old friend of the Mavericks, Sir Albus Vulgaris, pointed out last night on Twitter while I was watching the game from my couch, which was that if you go back a couple of years ago to when the Thunder had that stunning season of success with Chris Paul, they had all the success with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chris Paul, and Dennis Schroeder on the court. It's three guards who could all attack, right? Allows you to attack the defense from all different angles. And adding Spencer Dinwiddie to the mix and having Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie playing off of Luka Doncic. You saw it in the game when they beat the Celtics the other day. Luka could attack the paint, and then when the defense collapsed on him, he could kick it out to those guys. And not only are they capable of making a shot like Spencer has the last couple games, but they can then attack the defense themselves. And when you get the defense scrambled like that, and you can attack from multiple angles in multiple places and have multiple paint touches on one possession, it makes it that much harder for your team to guard, as opposed to just having Luka driving into the paint and kicking out to guys who are kind of standstill shooters. You might know where they're going to be, but it's a little simpler for your team to guard that. And I think that's been a huge advantage for Dallas now.
Yeah, and they're going to have, like Dorian Finney-Smith is a standstill shooter who, like, Finney-Smith has become a really good complementary offensive player because he's either catching and shooting, moving it, or very decisively attacking a closeout. And that gets back to, role definition, acceptance, and enthusiasm. The ball's never going to stop with him, or he's catching it on a cut. Bullock, the same way, except for not a whole lot of attacking closeouts there. But it will be interesting. So Dinwiddie has started the last, he started several times here because Brunson missed a game or two. Reggie Bullock, who's, quietly been a very high value mid-level signing for them, just giving them another kind of defensive, I call it Swiss Army knife, guy capable of guarding multiple positions. He's been out this road trip due to personal reasons. That's why Dinwiddie started these last couple games. And Dinwiddie will, when Bullock gets back and when they've got their full cast, he'll come off the bench. What's going to be interesting are the decisions Jay Kidd has to make on closing lineups. Do you go with those three guards?
It sure seems like they're going to close the way they have been the last couple of games, right?
Well, it's gotten to the point where Dinwiddie's definitely got to be on the floor. I mean, I
can't see him taking Jalen off the court.
They have that's happened before. That I'm forgetting the exact game, but no, I think it was against the Jazz at home. Brunson did sit down the stretch. So I think there's a game-to-game decision there, but I don't think the decision is going to be, is Dinwiddie out there? I think it's who's out there with Luka, Dinwiddie, and I think Dorian Finney-Smith will be out there every time too.
So Luka's usage rate since the trade is down pretty significantly. His shooting is up. Some of the best shooting stretch of his career right now.
They desperately needed another ball handler. I think you'd agree with that, man. Like just adding another guy to take some of the load off of him and Brunson has been
that's
huge.
what I was going to ask, is just reducing the stress on him, because we know that that's a big factor for the Mavs.
Well, you're reducing the stress on him. Even sometimes, like they run a lot of dribble handoff stuff for him, where he doesn't have to bring the ball up the floor and kind of go through that grind. But he's still able to finish plays. I think that stuff, it's little things, but I think that kind of reduces the wear and tear on him. He is in drastically better shape than he was earlier this season. Now, I still maintain to get in really good shape by NBA standards, you have to come to camp in good shape. That's kind of the next step for him going into next. Like if he comes to camp in shape, I think he's the MVP favorite.
Yeah, for sure.
It's that simple. So that's the next step, the next challenge for him. But like last year, he was so spectacular in that first round series against the Clippers. But there were, late in some of those losses, he ran out of gas in the fourth quarter. Now he is in better shape than I think he was at any point last year. He's lighter than he was. With Dinwiddie and Brunson has gotten, better this year. There is certainly more ball handling around him. I think it's a better situation for Luka to be able to finish strong. And again, all you got to look at is this team's plus 53 and 38 clutch minutes over the last month and a half. And again, they're not, these are beating Boston and Brooklyn and the Warriors on the road, beating the Jazz at home, the Warriors at home. It's not like it's just a soft stretch of schedule.
And by the way, you've got Chris Paul out with this thumb injury. We'll see by the time this pod comes out, we'll know what happened with this MRI with Steph Curry's foot from this play when Marcus Smart fell on him last night when, just by Steve Kerr's comments after the game, that sounded kind of ominous. Anytime you hear about a left foot injury, it's getting an MRI.
I've seen that injury. It's actually a similar play to Solomon Hill with LeBron last year.
Yeah.
It reminded me so much years ago of Matthew Dellavedova, and I had to write all about it then, again, being accused of a dirty play, diving into Kyle Korver's foot, chasing a loose ball. I've seen this play happen many times. And it's always a debate about whether it was a dirty play or the guy just being aggressive, but it leads to injuries. That is it is unfortunately a play that generates injuries.
I think dirty is strong. Reckless maybe, but listen, Marcus Smart makes his living making hustle plays. He was hustling for a loose ball. He didn't. I just cannot fathom that he targeted the foot.
I know, man. I've seen this before. This exact play I've seen.
I think this is a lot different than the Dellavedova play, for example, but that's just my opinion. But regardless of that, the specifics on that, Dallas is playing awesome. And some of these other contenders in the West are having some key injuries. And it's just that it could all be breaking the right way for Dallas heading into the playoffs.
So I'm assuming Chris Paul
now they're
will be
tied
right for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, he's already doing some shooting and stuff.
Yeah.
He'll be back in the short term. Right now, though, Dallas is tied for fourth essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that goes.
And three losses back of the Warriors with 13 to go. It's going to be, if Steph has to miss some time, that could get very interesting.
The way the Mavs are playing right now, the only team in the West that I would not pick them to beat in the series are the Suns, and I'm assuming Chris Paul will be right for the playoffs. If the Warriors are, if they've got Draymond rolling and Steph is healthy, I would pick the boat. That we got to wait and see on some injury news with the Warriors. But other than that, I mean, the Mavericks, and it's not just right now. It's over, almost a 3-month span now, 2.5 months.
And I'll tell you what, the Mavs are pretty well built to play Phoenix too, especially now that they can play a little small. We've seen with, that's kind of been the question. How can the Suns match up if you can, pull Ayton away from the basket? They don't really have a way to play small. They basically just got traditional centers. I'd love to see that series. If that's the second round of 1-4, be a hell of a series.
It'd be a fascinating series. I don't think they have an answer for Ayton. And as great as the Mavericks have been, and I just gloat about their clutch success.
Well, they're not the Suns, but you know what?
The Suns is still the best.
You know what though, too? You know what though, too? The Mavs would have the best player in that series. That's.
But I think
very interesting.
You want to know why else it would be interesting? Is because MacMahon has some nightlife spots lined up in Phoenix. That's why.
First of all, I'm old and washed.
I'm trying to end the pod here. It's just let me grease it right out.
No, don't.
Just like Morgan. Just like Morgan Freeman going through that pipe. Greasing it right out.
In trouble, brother.
What the hell are you talking about?
He's taking shots at me for getting my act.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Hoop Collective podcast. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Adios, amigos, and my enemies.